The silence in the briefing room was deafening. 23 hardened Marines sat frozen as General Morrison's weathered hands trembled while turning the pages of a classified file. The same men who had spent months questioning whether a woman could truly belong among their ranks now watched their commanding officers' face drain of color with each revelation. "Gentlemen," the general's voice cracked, breaking the tension that had built like a storm cloud. "You have no idea who you've been serving alongside." What started as another day of routine skepticism about the newest addition to their elite unit was about to become the most humbling experience of their military careers. The woman they had dismissed, mocked, and underestimated was about to shatter every assumption they held about courage, sacrifice, and what it truly means to serve your country. This is the story of how prejudice met its match in the most unexpected way, and how one Marine's hidden past would forever change the men who thought they knew what heroism looked like. The morning sun cast long shadows across Camp Pendleton as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos stepped off the transport vehicle, her Marine Corps uniform crisp despite the long journey from Virginia. The California heat hit her like a wall, but she had endured far worse conditions in places most people couldn't pronounce. Her dark eyes surveyed the sprawling base that would become her new home, taking in every detail with the practiced awareness of someone who had learned that survival often depended on knowing your surroundings. At 32, Maria had seen more combat than many Marines twice her age, though her youthful appearance often led people to underestimate her experience. Standing at 5 feet 6 inches with an athletic build earned through years of rigorous training and real-world application, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that came from facing death and emerging victorious. Her black hair was pulled back in regulation style, and a small scar above her left eyebrow told a story she rarely shared. As she made her way to the administration building, carrying only a standard-issue duffel bag, Maria was unaware of the conversation taking place in the nearby mess hall. Sergeant First Class Jake Morrison, no relation to the base's commanding general, was holding court with several other Marines, his voice carrying the skeptical tone that had become all too familiar whenever the topic of women in combat roles arose. "I'm telling you, this whole integration thing is just political correctness gone crazy," Jake said, stabbing at his breakfast with unnecessary force. "They're lowering standards just to make the numbers look good. Mark my words, when the shooting starts, we'll be the ones covering for someone who shouldn't be here in the first place." Corporal Tommy Rodriguez, a young Marine from Texas with barely 2 years of service under his belt, nodded eagerly. He looked up to Jake and often echoed his opinions without much independent thought. "My cousin deployed with a mixed unit last year," Tommy added. "Said the women couldn't keep up with the physical demands. Always needed help with the heavy equipment." Staff Sergeant Mike Chun, a veteran of 3 deployments who usually kept his opinions to himself, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Something about the conversation didn't sit right with him, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. Mike had learned long ago that combat had a way of revealing people's true character, regardless of their gender, age, or background. The conversation continued as other Marines filtered in, and out of the mess hall, some joining in with their own stories and opinions, others listening with varying degrees of interest or discomfort. The debate about women in combat roles had been ongoing for years, and everyone seemed to have a strong opinion one way or another. Meanwhile, Maria completed her administrative check-in and was assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines, a unit with a distinguished history and an equally distinguished reputation for excellence. The assignment clerk, a young corporal who couldn't have been more than 20, handed her the paperwork with a professional smile that didn't quite mask his curiosity. "You'll be reporting to Captain Williams," the clerk informed her. "He's expecting you at 1,400 hours for your initial briefing. Your quarters assignment is in Building C, 2nd floor, room 237. Is this your first time at Pendleton, Staff Sergeant?" Maria nodded, signing the last of her paperwork. "Yes, but I've heard good things about the unit. Looking forward to getting started." Her voice carried a slight accent, traces of her childhood in East Los Angeles that she had never tried to completely eliminate. It reminded her of where she came from and how far she had traveled. As she made her way to her assigned quarters, Maria passed groups of Marines engaged in various training exercises. She observed their techniques, their teamwork, their level of fitness and discipline. These were good Marines, she could tell, but she also sensed an undercurrent of tension that had nothing to do with their training. Word traveled fast on military bases, and she suspected that her arrival had already become a topic of discussion. Room 237 was small, but functional, containing a single bed, a desk, a dresser, and a small closet. Maria had lived in far worse conditions during her deployments, and the private room was actually a luxury compared to some of the accommodations she had experienced. She unpacked her belongings methodically, placing her few personal items carefully around the room. A photo of her parents, both immigrants who had worked multiple jobs to support their family, went on the desk. A small wooden cross, a gift from her grandmother, found its place on the windowsill. Her uniforms went into the closet with military precision, each item properly spaced and organized. Her gear bag contained equipment that most Marines her rank wouldn't have access to, specialized items that spoke to experiences and training beyond the ordinary. But these details remained hidden from casual observation, locked away like the memories and experiences that had shaped her into the warrior she had become. That afternoon, Maria made her way to Captain Williams' office for her initial briefing. The captain was a tall, lean man in his late 30s with graying temples and eyes that suggested he had seen his share of difficult situations. His office walls were decorated with unit citations, deployment photos, and commendations that spoke to a career built on solid leadership and battlefield experience. Staff Sergeant Santos, welcome to the 3rd Battalion, Captain Williams said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I've reviewed your transfer orders, though I have to admit, much of your file appears to be classified or redacted. That's unusual for someone at your rank level. Maria took the offered seat, maintaining the respectful posture of a subordinate addressing a superior officer. Yes, sir. Some of my previous assignments required higher clearance levels. I'm sure the relevant information will be made available as needed for unit integration purposes. Captain Williams studied her for a moment, clearly intrigued by the mysterious gaps in her record. Your previous commanding officers speak very highly of your abilities. Colonel Matthews from Quantico specifically requested that you be given opportunities to demonstrate your leadership capabilities here. That's quite an endorsement. Thank you, sir. I'm committed to contributing to the unit's mission and maintaining the high standards of the Corps. Maria's response was professional and measured, giving away nothing of her internal thoughts about the challenges that likely lay ahead. The captain outlined her initial assignments, which would include leading training exercises for junior Marines and serving as a liaison for an upcoming joint operation with Special Operations Forces. It was clear that despite any reservations the unit might have about female integration, Captain Williams intended to utilize her skills and experience fully. As the briefing concluded, Captain Williams offered one final piece of advice. Staff Sergeant, I won't pretend that everyone in this unit is immediately comfortable with recent policy changes. Change is never easy, especially for traditions-minded organizations like the Marine Corps. I expect you to prove yourself through your actions and performance, just as any new member would be expected to do. Maria understood the subtext of his words. She would be under scrutiny from the moment she stepped into her new role, judged more harshly and held to higher standards than her male counterparts. It was a reality she had faced before and had learned to navigate with patience and professionalism. That evening, as she made her way to the mess hall for dinner, Maria could feel the eyes of other Marines tracking her movements. Conversations quieted as she passed, then resumed in hushed tones once she had moved on. She selected her meal and looked for a place to sit, eventually choosing an empty table near the window where she could eat in relative peace while observing the social dynamics around her. Jake Morrison and his group were seated several tables away, their discussion animated and occasionally punctuated by glances in her direction. Maria didn't need to hear their words to understand the general nature of their conversation. She had encountered similar attitudes throughout her career and had developed thick skin and effective coping strategies. What they didn't know, what none of them could possibly know, was the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. The mission she had completed, the lives she had saved, the sacrifices she had made in service to her country, all of it remained locked away in classified files and sealed records. Her presence among them was not the result of lowered standards or political correctness, but rather the culmination of years of proving herself in the most demanding environments imaginable. As she finished her meal and prepared to return to her quarters, Maria reflected on the path that had led her here. From the streets of East Los Angeles to the mountains of Afghanistan, from a scared teenager with few options to a highly trained warrior with capabilities that would astound her new unit members, her journey had been one of constant transformation and growth. The next few weeks would be crucial in establishing her place within the unit. She would need to demonstrate her skills without appearing to show off, earn respect without demanding it, and prove her worth without revealing the full extent of her classified background. It was a delicate balance, but one she had mastered through years of experience in challenging environments. Back in her quarters that night, Maria wrote in the journal she had kept throughout her military career. The entries were brief and focused, recording observations about her new unit, thoughts about upcoming challenges, and goals for the immediate future. She wrote carefully, knowing that military personnel files could be subject to review, but also knowing that the act of writing helped her process and prepare for what lay ahead. Outside her window, the base continued its 24-hour cycle of activity. Marines returning from late training exercises, security patrols making their rounds, the constant hum of activity that defined military life. Maria found the familiar sounds comforting, a reminder that she was once again part of something larger than herself, contributing to a mission that extended far beyond individual concerns or personal recognition. As she prepared for sleep, Maria allowed herself a moment of reflection on the irony of her situation. Here she was, surrounded by Marines questioning her qualifications and capabilities, when the truth was that many of them had never faced a fraction of the challenges she had overcome. But that truth would remain hidden, protected by classification levels and operational security requirements that she respected and upheld without question. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities to prove herself. She would face them as she had faced everything else in her military career, with courage, professionalism, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. The Marines of the 3rd Battalion would eventually learn what kind of warrior had joined their ranks, but that revelation would come through her actions and performance, not through stories or boasts about past achievements. The stage was set for a confrontation between prejudice and reality, between assumptions and truth. Maria Santos was ready to meet that challenge, armed with skills and experiences that would eventually command the respect and admiration of even her harshest critics. The morning alarm pierced through the California dawn at 0500 hours, but Maria had been awake for 30 minutes, a habit ingrained from years of operations where being the first one ready could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. She completed her morning routine with mechanical precision, donning her physical training uniform and lacing her boots with the same attention to detail she applied to everything in her military life. The physical training formation was already assembling on the parade ground when she arrived, Marines falling into neat rows organized by rank and unit assignment. The morning air carried the familiar sounds of military preparation, the shuffle of boots on concrete, quiet conversations between squad mates, and the occasional sharp command from a non-commissioned officer ensuring proper formation discipline. Sergeant First Class Jake Morrison was leading the formation warm-up, his voice carrying across the assembled Marines with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. His physical presence was imposing, standing over 6 feet tall with the kind of muscular build that came from years of dedicated fitness training and combat deployments. As he called out exercises, his eyes periodically swept over the formation, taking inventory of his Marines and noting anything that seemed out of place. When his gaze landed on Maria, positioned in the formation according to her rank and unit assignment, Jake's expression shifted subtly. It wasn't quite a sneer, but it carried enough skepticism to be noticed by those paying attention. He had made his opinions about women in combat roles well known throughout the unit, and her presence represented everything he believed was wrong with the current direction of military policy. "Today we're running the combat conditioning course," Jake announced to the formation. 5 miles through varied terrain with full gear. This isn't a leisurely jog through the park, people. This is designed to simulate the physical demands you will face in combat situations where your life and the lives of your fellow Marines depend on your ability to perform under extreme stress. The course he described was notorious throughout the base for its difficulty. It included obstacles that tested not just cardiovascular endurance, but also upper body strength, agility, and mental toughness. Many Marines dreaded the course, and even experienced veterans found it challenging. For someone trying to prove themselves worthy of acceptance in an elite unit, it represented both an opportunity and a significant risk. As the formation began moving toward the starting point, Maria found herself running alongside Corporal Rodriguez, the young Marine from Texas who had been part of Jake's breakfast conversation the previous day. Tommy had been assigned to the same squad and was clearly uncomfortable with the situation, unsure how to interact with a female staff sergeant who outranked him, but whom he had been encouraged to view with suspicion. "Staff Sergeant," Tommy ventured as they jogged toward the course starting line. "You ever run anything like this before?" His question carried genuine curiosity mixed with skepticism about her ability to complete the challenging course successfully. Maria glanced over at the young Marine, noting his nervous energy and obvious uncertainty. "I've run my share of difficult courses, Corporal. The key is pacing yourself properly and maintaining focus on the objective rather than getting caught up in individual obstacles." Her response was measured and professional, offering helpful advice without revealing anything about her extensive experience with far more demanding physical challenges. In truth, the course ahead looked relatively straightforward compared to some of the training she had completed during her classified assignments. But she understood that demonstrating her capabilities would be far more effective than describing them. Staff Sergeant Mike Chun positioned himself near the middle of the formation, his experienced eye taking in the dynamics playing out around him. Mike had served long enough to recognize talent when he saw it, and something about Maria's demeanor suggested that she was far more capable than the skeptics in the unit realized. He had learned to trust his instincts about people, and those instincts were telling him that there was more to the new staff sergeant than met the eye. The course began with a 3-mile run through hills and ravines designed to test endurance and navigation skills. Marines were required to maintain formation while negotiating challenging terrain that included steep climbs, stream crossings, and areas where footing was uncertain. The pace set by Jake was aggressive, designed to separate those who were truly fit from those who merely appeared to be in good condition. Maria settled into a steady rhythm, her breathing controlled and her stride efficient. She had learned long ago that successful completion of endurance events required careful energy management and mental discipline. Around her, some Marines were already beginning to show signs of fatigue, their breathing becoming labored and their pace beginning to flag. Jake periodically looked back over his shoulder, checking on the formation, but paying particular attention to Maria's position and apparent condition. He had set a pace that he believed would expose any weaknesses in her fitness level, but as the miles passed, she showed no signs of struggling. If anything, she appeared to be running well within her capabilities, maintaining perfect form while others around her began to labor. The first major obstacle came at the 2-mile mark. A series of rope climbs followed immediately by a low crawl under simulated barbed wire. This combination tested upper body strength followed immediately by core strength and mental toughness, as Marines had to transition rapidly between very different physical demands while dealing with fatigue from the preceding run. Maria approached the rope climb with the same measured confidence she had shown throughout the run. Her technique was flawless, using her legs effectively to assist her arms and ascending the 30-foot rope with smooth, efficient movements. She reached the top well ahead of several larger Marines and descended with control rather than simply sliding down and risking rope burn or injury. The low crawl section required Marines to traverse 50 yards of muddy terrain while staying below simulated barbed wire stretched just 18 inches above the ground. It was designed to be uncomfortable and disorienting, testing mental toughness as much as physical capability. Maria entered the crawl with her weapon properly secured and her movements calculated to maintain maximum speed while staying well clear of the wire obstacles above. Corporal Rodriguez, who had started the crawl section just ahead of her, was struggling with the technique and beginning to panic as mud filled his mouth and nose. His movements became increasingly erratic as claustrophobia began to set in, and he was in danger of either injuring himself on the wire above or becoming completely stuck in the increasingly thick mud below. Without hesitation, Maria adjusted her own path to move closer to the struggling Marine. "Corporal, control your breathing and follow my lead," she said in a calm but authoritative voice that cut through his growing panic. "Small movements, stay low, and focus on the exit point ahead. You got this." Her intervention was exactly what Tommy needed to regain his composure and complete the obstacle successfully. As they emerged from the crawl, he looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and confusion, uncertain how to reconcile his preconceptions about female Marines with a competent leader who had just helped him through a difficult moment. The remaining obstacles included a wall climb, a series of balance beam challenges, and a final sprint that tested whatever energy reserves Marines had managed to conserve throughout the earlier portions of the course. Each element was designed to test different aspects of physical and mental preparation, and the cumulative effect was exhausting even for Marines in excellent condition. Throughout each challenge, Maria performed with a level of competence that began to attract attention from the other Marines. Her movements were efficient and purposeful, showing familiarity with obstacle course techniques that suggested extensive training and experience. She completed each element quickly, but never in a way that appeared to be showing off or attempting to embarrass her male counterparts. Jake finished the course first, as expected for someone in his position and with his level of fitness. But as he waited for the rest of the formation to complete the final obstacles, he found himself watching Maria's performance with increasing bewilderment. She finished in the top 10% of the formation, ahead of many Marines who had been in the unit for years and who prided themselves on their physical conditioning. Staff Sergeant Shun crossed the finish line just behind Maria, breathing heavily, but wearing a slight smile that suggested satisfaction with both his own performance and what he had observed from the newest member of their unit. "Not bad for a first run through our course," he commented as Maria checked her time and began the cool-down routine. "Thank you, Staff Sergeant. It's a well-designed course that tests all the right capabilities," Maria replied, her breathing already returning to normal despite the demanding physical challenge they had just completed. Her response was professional and modest, showing respect for the course design while demonstrating that she was nowhere near her physical limits. As the formation reassembled for the return march to base, conversations began to buzz with observations about the morning's performance. Several Marines who had started the day with skeptical attitudes found themselves reconsidering their assumptions. Maria had not just completed the challenging course successfully. She had done so while helping a struggling team member and maintaining the kind of professional composure that marked experienced leaders. Jake was notably quiet during the march back, processing what he had witnessed and trying to reconcile it with his firmly held beliefs about women in combat roles. The performance he had just observed didn't fit his expectations, and he found himself searching for explanations that would allow him to maintain his existing worldview. Back at the barracks, as Marines cleaned their gear and prepared for the day's remaining activities, the conversations continued. Corporal Rodriguez sought out several of his friends to describe how Maria had helped him through the obstacle course, his tone carrying genuine appreciation for her intervention. Other Marines shared their own observations about her performance, and gradually a picture began to emerge of someone whose capabilities exceeded initial expectations. During the lunch break, Maria found herself approached by Staff Sergeant Shun, who had been observing the unit dynamics with the experienced eye of a veteran leader. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, indicating the empty chair across from her in the mess hall. "Of course, Staff Sergeant. Please have a seat." Maria welcomed the company, particularly from someone who seemed to possess the kind of mature perspective that could be valuable in navigating the social complexities of her new unit. Mike settled into the chair and studied her for a moment before speaking. "That was impressive work on the course this morning. You've obviously had some serious training somewhere along the line. Your technique on a rope climb was textbook perfect, and the way you handled Rodriguez's panic attack showed real leadership instincts." Maria acknowledged the compliment with a nod. "Thank you. Physical training has always been important to me, and helping fellow Marines is just part of the job. Corporal Rodriguez is a good Marine who is just having a difficult moment. We've all been there." "True enough," Mike agreed. "But not everyone has the presence of mind to help others while dealing with their own challenges. That speaks to experience and character." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "I've been in this business long enough to recognize when someone has capabilities beyond what appears in their basic record. You strike me as someone with a story that goes deeper than what we're seeing on the surface." Maria met his gaze directly, appreciating his perceptiveness while maintaining the operational security requirements that governed her past assignments. "Every Marine has a story, Staff Sergeant. What matters is how we perform our current mission and support our unit's objectives." Mike nodded, understanding that he wasn't going to get details about her background, but also recognizing that her non-answer was itself revealing. "Fair enough. Just know that if you need anything as you settle into the unit, I'm happy to help. Change isn't always easy, but good Marines find ways to adapt and excel." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Jake Morrison, who approached their table with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested he had something specific to say. His expression was serious, and Maria could sense that this interaction would be more challenging than her pleasant conversation with Mike. "Staff Sergeant Santos," Jake began, his tone formal, but carrying underlying tension. "I wanted to acknowledge your performance on this morning's course. You clearly came prepared for the physical demands." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I hope you understand that earning acceptance in this unit requires more than just completing a single training exercise. Combat operations demand capabilities and reliability that can only be proven over time." Maria recognized the challenge embedded in his seemingly respectful words. Jake was acknowledging her morning success while simultaneously raising the bar and suggesting that much greater tests lay ahead. It was a classic technique for maintaining skepticism while appearing to be fair and open-minded. "I understand completely, Sergeant Morrison," she replied, matching his formal tone. "I look forward to opportunities to demonstrate my capabilities across the full range of military operations. The Marine Corps trained me to meet challenges head-on, and I intend to uphold that standard." Jake nodded curtly and moved away, leaving Maria and Mike to finish their lunch in contemplative silence. The morning's physical training had been just the beginning of a much longer process of proving herself worthy of acceptance and respect. But Maria had faced similar challenges before, and she understood that consistency and professionalism would eventually overcome prejudice and skepticism. As the day continued with additional training exercises and administrative duties, word of the morning's events spread throughout the battalion. Marines who had not witnessed the obstacle course performance heard secondhand accounts that began to challenge some of the preconceived notions about their new staff sergeant. The process of changing minds and attitudes had begun, though it would require sustained effort and continued demonstration of capabilities. That evening, as Maria updated her journal with observations about her first full day with the unit, she reflected on the small victories and ongoing challenges that lay ahead. The morning's physical training had been an important first step in establishing her credibility, but she knew that much more would be required before she could consider herself fully accepted and integrated into the tight-knit community of Marines she now served alongside. 3 weeks had passed since Maria's arrival at Camp Pendleton, and the initial skepticism about her capabilities had evolved into something more complex. While some Marines remained doubtful about women in combat roles, others had begun to recognize that she possessed skills and knowledge that exceeded their expectations. The morning obstacle course had been just the beginning of a series of evaluations that would test every aspect of her military capabilities. Captain Williams had designed a comprehensive assessment program that would evaluate Maria's performance across multiple disciplines, including marksmanship, tactical planning, leadership under stress, and combat simulation exercises. While he presented these evaluations as standard procedure for any new staff sergeant joining the unit, everyone understood that Maria was being held to a higher standard than her male counterparts would face. The first major test came during a live-fire exercise at the base shooting range. Marines were required to demonstrate proficiency with multiple weapon systems, including the M4 carbine, M240 machine gun, and M9 pistol under various conditions, including low light, stress positions, and rapid target engagement scenarios. The exercise was designed to simulate combat conditions where split-second accuracy could determine mission success or failure. Jake Morrison was serving as the range safety officer for the exercise, a position that gave him both responsibility for ensuring safe conduct and opportunity to closely observe each Marine's performance. He had been hoping that the shooting exercise would reveal limitations in Maria's training that hadn't been apparent during the physical conditioning test. In his experience, marksmanship was one area where the differences between male and female Marines often became most apparent. As Maria approached the firing line for her first shooting event, she could feel the attention of the other Marines focused on her performance. Some watched with genuine curiosity about her abilities, while others seemed to be waiting for any sign of weakness or hesitation that would confirm their preconceived notions about women in combat roles. The first event required rapid engagement of multiple targets at varying distances using the M4 carbine. Marines had 30 seconds to acquire and engage 6 targets positioned between 50 and 300 meters, with scoring based on both accuracy and time to completion. It was a demanding test that required excellent shooting fundamentals combined with the ability to operate effectively under time pressure. Maria settled into her shooting position with movements that were both fluid and precise. Her stance was textbook perfect, weight properly distributed, and body position optimized for recoil management and rapid target acquisition. As the exercise began, her rifle movements were economical and purposeful, transitioning between targets with minimal wasted motion. The sound of her rifle fire was steady and controlled, each shot carefully aimed rather than rushed. She engaged the targets in optimal sequence, starting with the most distant and working systematically closer, a technique that maximized accuracy while maintaining speed. Her breathing control was evident in the rhythm of her shooting, each shot fired during the natural respiratory pause that provided maximum stability. When the 30-second time limit ended, range personnel moved forward to score the targets. Maria had successfully engaged all 6 targets with precision that impressed even the most experienced shooters present. Her groupings were tight and centered, demonstrating both technical skill and the kind of mental discipline required for effective marksmanship under pressure. Jake examined the targets personally, double-checking the scoring and looking for any technical irregularities that might explain the exceptional performance. Finding none, he was forced to acknowledge that Maria had not only met the standard but had achieved one of the highest scores recorded by any Marine in recent months. The machine gun exercise that followed proved equally impressive. The M240 required different techniques than the carbine, demanding greater physical strength to manage recoil while maintaining accuracy during sustained fire. Maria demonstrated familiarity with the weapon system that suggested extensive training and experience, adjusting her shooting position and grip to optimize control and accuracy. Her target engagement was systematic and thorough, walking fire across multiple targets in a pattern that would have been devastating against enemy forces in a real combat situation. The weapon's recoil, which sometimes challenged Marines who were unfamiliar with proper technique, seemed to have minimal effect on her ability to maintain accurate fire throughout the exercise duration. Corporal Rodriguez, who was firing at the adjacent position, found himself distracted by Maria's performance. The confidence and skill she displayed were unlike anything he had expected, and he began to question the assumptions about female Marines that had been reinforced through months of conversations with Jake and other skeptical unit members. The pistol phase of the exercise included both precision shooting and rapid deployment scenarios designed to test the kind of close-quarters combat skills that could be crucial in urban warfare environments. Marines were required to draw their weapons and engage targets at distances ranging from 3 to 25 meters, often while moving or from improvised shooting positions. Maria's pistol technique was equally polished, her draw stroke smooth and consistent, sight alignment precise, and trigger control textbook perfect. She engaged moving targets with an accuracy that suggested hundreds of hours of practice and possibly real-world application of these skills in high-stress environments. During one particularly challenging scenario that required shooting while advancing toward targets, Maria demonstrated tactical movement techniques that went beyond standard Marine Corps training. Her use of cover, timing of movements, and coordination between movement and shooting showed sophistication that caught the attention of Captain Williams, who was observing the exercise from the range control tower. As the shooting exercise concluded, Marines gathered around the scoring boards to review results and compare performances. Maria's scores were consistently in the top percentile across all weapon systems and scenarios, a level of achievement that commanded respect even from those who remained philosophically opposed to women in combat roles. Staff Sergeant Chun approached her as she cleaned her weapons, his expression reflecting both admiration and curiosity about the level of skill she had demonstrated. Outstanding shooting, Staff Sergeant. Your technique with the 240 was particularly impressive. That's not a weapon system that many people master to that level. Thank you, Maria replied while continuing her methodical weapon cleaning routine. I've always believed that marksmanship is a fundamental military skill that deserves serious attention and practice. These weapon systems are tools that can save lives when properly employed. Mike nodded, noting both her professional response and her obvious familiarity with weapons maintenance procedures. Your tactical movement during the pistol scenarios caught my attention too. That kind of coordination between movement and shooting usually comes from specialized training or real-world experience. Mind me asking where you picked up those techniques? Maria paused in her cleaning routine, considering how to respond without violating operational security requirements that govern discussion of her classified assignments. Advanced marksmanship training has been a focus throughout my career. The Marine Corps provides excellent opportunities for skill development when Marines demonstrate aptitude and commitment. Her response was diplomatically vague while still being truthful, a technique she had mastered for discussing her background without revealing details that remained classified. Mike understood that he wasn't going to get specifics about her training history, but her skill level spoke volumes about the experiences and opportunities that had shaped her development as a Marine. The next phase of evaluation came 2 days later during a tactical planning exercise that required squad leaders to develop and present comprehensive operation plans for a hypothetical combat mission. The scenario involved clearing a fortified compound while minimizing civilian casualties and recovering sensitive intelligence materials, exactly the kind of complex mission that demanded both tactical expertise and leadership capabilities. Marines were given 4 hours to analyze the situation, develop their plans, and prepare detailed briefings that would be evaluated by a panel of senior officers. The exercise tested not only tactical knowledge, but also communication skills, attention to detail, and ability to think creatively under pressure. Maria approached the planning exercise with the same methodical precision she had shown in previous evaluations. She studied the intelligence materials carefully, analyzed the terrain and enemy dispositions, and considered multiple courses of action before settling on her final plan. Her approach showed familiarity with planning procedures that extended beyond basic Marine Corps training. Her final plan was sophisticated and thorough, incorporating elements of deception, multiple contingency options, and coordination between different types of units. She had identified potential problems that other Marines missed and developed creative solutions that demonstrated both tactical innovation and practical experience with similar operations. During her briefing to the evaluation panel, Maria's presentation was clear, confident, and comprehensive. She answered questions with authority and demonstrated understanding of complex tactical principles that impressed the senior officers. Her plan was selected as one of the top 3 presentations out of 15 participants. Captain Williams was particularly intrigued by the sophistication of her tactical analysis and the depth of her understanding about special operations procedures. Several elements of her plan suggested familiarity with tactics and techniques that were not part of standard Marine Corps training curricula, raising questions about her background and previous assignments. Following the tactical planning exercise, informal conversations among the Marines began to shift in tone and content. While some skeptics remained unconvinced about women in combat roles generally, most unit members had begun to acknowledge that Maria possessed exceptional capabilities that commanded professional respect. Jake Morrison found himself in an increasingly uncomfortable position as Maria continued to excel in every evaluation. His strongly held beliefs about female Marines were being challenged by mounting evidence that contradicted his assumptions, creating internal conflict between his preconceptions and the reality he was witnessing. During a private conversation with Captain Williams, Jake expressed his confusion and frustration about the situation. "Sir, I'm having trouble understanding how someone with her apparent capabilities ended up in our unit. Her skills suggest training and experience that goes way beyond what you'd expect for someone at her rank and with her service record." Captain Williams had been wondering the same thing and had made several inquiries about Maria's background, only to encounter classification barriers and redacted records that prevented him from getting complete information about her previous assignments. "I agree that there are some unusual aspects to Staff Sergeant Sanos's background. However, what matters for our purposes is how she performs her current duties and contributes to unit effectiveness." The captain's response was professionally appropriate, but did little to satisfy Jake's curiosity about the mysteries surrounding their new staff sergeant. If anything, the official reluctance to discuss her background only deepened his suspicion that there were significant aspects of her story that remained hidden. As the 3rd week of evaluation activities concluded, Maria had consistently demonstrated capabilities that exceeded expectations across every area of assessment. Her physical fitness, marksmanship skills, tactical knowledge, and leadership abilities had all proven to be exceptional, gradually earning respect from Marines who had initially questioned her presence in their unit. However, the most significant test was still to come. The following week would bring a major field exercise that would simulate extended combat operations under realistic conditions. This exercise would test not only individual capabilities, but also team cohesion, leadership under extreme stress, and the kind of sustained performance that determines success or failure in actual combat situations. As Maria prepared for this final and most comprehensive evaluation, she reflected on the progress that had been made in changing attitudes and building acceptance within the unit. The process had been gradual but steady, with each successful demonstration of her capabilities helping to overcome prejudice and skepticism. Yet she also understood that some Marines remained unconvinced and that full acceptance would require continued proof of her abilities over extended periods. The upcoming field exercise would be crucial in determining whether the progress made so far could be sustained when faced with the ultimate test of military capabilities, simulated combat operations that would push everyone involved to their limits. The pre-dawn darkness of the Mojave Desert enveloped the Marine unit as they prepared for Exercise Iron Thunder, a grueling 5-day field training event that would test every aspect of their combat readiness. The exercise was designed to simulate extended operations in hostile territory, complete with sleep deprivation, resource constraints, and the constant pressure of simulated enemy contact that could materialize without warning. Maria checked her gear one final time before the unit moved out to their initial positions. Her pack contained everything needed for 5 days of independent operations, carefully organized to maximize efficiency while maintaining the mobility essential for effective infantry operations. Around her, other Marines completed similar preparations, their movements betraying various levels of nervousness about the challenging days ahead. The exercise scenario involved a reconnaissance mission behind enemy lines, followed by raids on multiple targets, and culminating in extraction under pressure from pursuing enemy forces. Success would require perfect coordination between team members, innovative problem-solving under extreme stress, and the kind of sustained performance that separated elite units from ordinary military organizations. Captain Williams addressed the assembled Marines in the darkness, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had led similar operations under real combat conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, the next 5 days will test everything we've trained for. You'll be pushed to your physical and mental limits, forced to make critical decisions with incomplete information, and required to perform complex operations while dealing with fatigue, stress, and constant uncertainty. He paused, allowing his words to sink in before continuing. Remember that in real combat, there are no second chances for failure. The skills and teamwork you demonstrate during this exercise directly translate to your ability to accomplish the mission and bring everyone home safely when lives are actually on the line. The unit was divided into 3 squads, each assigned specific objectives that would require coordination with the others for overall mission success. Maria was designated as the assistant squad leader for 2nd Squad, a position that would test her ability to support the squad leader while taking initiative when circumstances demanded independent action. Jake Morrison was assigned as the squad leader for 3rd Squad, creating a dynamic where he would need to coordinate operations with Maria's unit while managing his ongoing skepticism about her capabilities. Captain Williams had deliberately created this situation to observe how professional relationships would develop under the stress of simulated combat operations. The first phase of the exercise began with a forced march through 20 miles of desert terrain to reach the initial objective area. Marines had to navigate using map and compass while maintaining operational security and avoiding detection by opposing forces played by members of other units specially trained to provide realistic enemy activity. As 2nd Squad moved through the desert darkness, Maria found herself naturally falling into the role of navigator and pace setter. Her land navigation skills proved exceptional, keeping the squad on course while maintaining the careful balance between speed and stealth necessary for successful infiltration behind enemy lines. Corporal Rodriguez, who was carrying the squad's primary communications equipment, found himself impressed by Maria's ability to maintain situational awareness while managing multiple navigation challenges simultaneously. She seemed to possess an intuitive understanding of terrain and tactical movement that made the complex navigation requirements appear effortless. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez whispered during a brief halt to check their position. "How are you keeping us so perfectly on course in this terrain? I can barely make out the landmarks on the map, but you seem to know exactly where we are at all times." Maria adjusted her position to study the map alongside the young corporal, using a red-filtered flashlight to preserve their night vision while providing instruction. Navigation is about reading the terrain in 3 dimensions and constantly updating your position based on multiple reference points. You can't rely on just one landmark or compass heading. Everything has to work together to give you accurate positioning. Her explanation was clear and educational, demonstrating both technical competence and natural teaching ability. Rodriguez found himself learning navigation techniques that went beyond his basic military training, gaining skills that would serve him well throughout his Marine Corps career. As the squads converged on their first major objective, a simulated enemy communications facility that needed to be neutralized without alerting other enemy forces in the area, the complexity of the tactical challenge became apparent. Success would require precise coordination, innovative problem-solving, and flawless execution under conditions that replicated the stress and uncertainty of real combat. Maria's squad was assigned to provide security and early warning while Jake's squad conducted the actual assault on the facility. This required close coordination between the two leaders, despite their ongoing personal tensions about women in combat roles and the broader questions surrounding Maria's mysterious background and exceptional capabilities. During the planning session for the assault, Maria contributed tactical insights that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of small unit operations and enemy defensive procedures. Her suggestions for approach routes, timing of the assault, and coordination between squads showed the kind of operational experience that typically came from extensive combat deployments or specialized training programs. Jake found himself torn between professional appreciation for her tactical acumen and persistent skepticism about how she had acquired such advanced skills. Her contributions to the mission planning were undeniably valuable, but they also raised questions that he couldn't ignore about the gaps and mysteries in her official service record. The assault itself unfolded with precision that surprised even the exercise controllers who were evaluating unit performance. Maria's squad provided flawless security, detecting and neutralizing enemy patrol elements before they could discover the assault force. Her early warning procedures and communication with Jake's squad enabled them to complete their mission without alerting enemy forces in adjacent areas. Following the successful completion of their first major objective, the squads received new orders that would test their ability to adapt to changing circumstances while operating under severe time constraints. Intelligence reports indicated that their original extraction plan had been compromised, requiring them to reach an alternate pickup point while avoiding increased enemy activity throughout the area. This phase of the exercise introduced the element of sleep deprivation that would characterize the remainder of the operation. Marines would be required to maintain operational effectiveness while dealing with fatigue, reduced cognitive function, and the physical stress of extended operations in challenging environmental conditions. As the second day of operations began, the cumulative effects of stress and exhaustion started to become apparent among the Marines. Simple tasks became more difficult, decision-making processes slowed, and the risk of errors increased significantly. This was exactly the condition that the exercise was designed to create, replicating the reality of extended combat operations where maintaining performance standards becomes increasingly difficult. Maria's response to these challenging conditions became a source of fascination for the other Marines. While everyone else showed obvious signs of fatigue and stress, she seemed to adapt to the demanding conditions with remarkable resilience. Her performance remained consistently high across all tasks, from complex navigation challenges to intricate tactical operations. During a brief rest period on the second night, Staff Sergeant Shun approached Maria with curiosity about her apparent immunity to the effects of sleep deprivation and stress that were affecting everyone else in the unit. Staff Sergeant, I have to ask, how are you managing to maintain such high performance levels? Most of us are starting to feel the effects of this exercise pretty seriously, but you seem as sharp as you were on day one. Maria considered his question carefully, understanding that her response needed to be honest without revealing classified information about training programs and operational experiences that remain protected by security regulations. I've learned that mental discipline is just as important as physical conditioning for for sustained operations. Managing stress and fatigue is a skill that can be developed through practice and proper techniques. Her explanation was accurate but incomplete, omitting details about specialized training programs designed to prepare military personnel for operations that far exceeded the demands of standard infantry exercises. The techniques she employed had been developed through years of exposure to conditions that made the current exercise seem relatively routine. On the third day of operations, the exercise scenario introduced a medical emergency that would test the unit's ability to respond to casualties while maintaining mission effectiveness. One of the Marines in Jake's squad was designated as critically wounded, requiring immediate evacuation while the unit continued to operate in hostile territory with enemy forces actively searching for their location. This scenario created the kind of complex decision-making challenge that separated exceptional leaders from ordinary military personnel. Success required balancing competing priorities, managing resources under extreme constraints, and making difficult choices about mission requirements versus personnel welfare. Maria immediately volunteered to lead the casualty evacuation team, taking responsibility for the most dangerous aspect of the operation while enabling the rest of the unit to continue with their primary mission. Her decision demonstrated the kind of leadership courage that commands respect regardless of personal opinions about policy issues or gender integration. The evacuation route she selected required movement through terrain that offered concealment from enemy observation, but also posed significant physical challenges for a team carrying a wounded Marine. Her navigation skills and tactical judgment proved crucial in avoiding detection while maintaining the speed necessary to reach medical evacuation facilities within the time constraints imposed by the exercise scenario. During the evacuation movement, Rodriguez found himself serving as one of the stretcher bearers, giving him additional opportunities to observe Maria's leadership style and decision-making processes. Her calm confidence under extreme stress was infectious, helping the entire evacuation team maintain focus and effectiveness despite the challenging conditions they faced. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez said during a brief rest halt, "I wanted to thank you for everything you've taught me during this exercise. The navigation techniques, the tactical principles, the leadership under pressure, it's all been incredibly valuable. I feel like I've learned more in the past 3 days than I did during months of regular training." Maria appreciated his acknowledgement while maintaining focus on their current mission requirements. "Thank you, Corporal. Remember that leadership development is an ongoing process. Every challenging situation provides opportunities to grow and improve your capabilities." As they completed the casualty evacuation and rejoined the main body for the final phase of the exercise, word of Maria's performance during the medical emergency spread throughout the unit. Marines who had been skeptical about her capabilities found their opinions shifting as they witnessed her consistent demonstration of exceptional skills and leadership courage. The final day of Exercise Iron Thunder brought the most challenging scenarios yet, with multiple simultaneous objectives that required perfect coordination between all 3 squads, while dealing with aggressive enemy pressure designed to test unit cohesion under extreme stress. Success would depend on each leader's ability to adapt to rapidly changing conditions while maintaining effective communication and mutual support. As the exercise reached its climax, Maria found herself in temporary command of multiple squads when communication failures isolated them from higher headquarters during a critical phase of the operation. Her decisions during this period would determine whether the unit achieved its objectives or failed in spectacular fashion while being overrun by opposing forces. The choices she made and the leadership she demonstrated during these final hours would become legendary within the unit, marking a turning point in how she was perceived by even her harshest critics. But the full story of her exceptional performance and the reactions it generated would only become clear when the exercise concluded and Marines had time to process what they had witnessed during 5 days of simulated combat operations that pushed everyone to their absolute limits. The final morning of exercise Iron Thunder dawned with an unexpected crisis that would transform everything the Marines thought they knew about their newest member. What had begun as a routine training exercise was about to become the most revealing moment in the unit's recent history, forever changing how they viewed both Maria Santos and their own assumptions about capability and courage. Captain Williams received an urgent communication from base headquarters just as the exercise was scheduled to conclude. A real emergency had developed involving hostage situation at a nearby civilian facility, and Higher Command was requesting immediate assistance from any available units with specialized capabilities. The irony was not lost on him that what had started as simulated combat was about to transition into potential real-world operations. Marines, listen up, Captain Williams announced to the assembled unit as they prepared for extraction from the training area. We've received a priority request for assistance with an ongoing situation. I need to evaluate our readiness for immediate deployment to support civilian authorities with a hostage rescue operation. The announcement sent a ripple of tension through the tired Marines. After 5 days of intense training operations, the prospect of immediate transition to real-world emergency response was both exciting and daunting. This was exactly the kind of situation that tested whether training translated effectively to actual operational requirements. As Captain Williams outlined the preliminary details of the hostage situation, Maria felt a familiar sensation that she had experienced many times before, the heightened awareness and mental clarity that came with transition from training to real operations. Her demeanor shifted subtly, but noticeably, taking on the focused intensity that characterized her response to genuine tactical challenges. Jake Morrison noticed the change immediately. Throughout the exercise, he had observed Maria's consistently high performance with a mixture of admiration and confusion. But now he was seeing something different, a level of tactical awareness and operational readiness that suggested extensive experience with exactly this kind of emergency response situation. The hostage situation involved armed individuals who had barricaded themselves inside a government building with several civilian employees. Initial reports suggested that the perpetrators were well-armed and had demonstrated willingness to use violence. Local law enforcement had established a perimeter, but lacked the specialized capabilities necessary for successful resolution of the crisis. As Captain Williams coordinated with higher headquarters about the unit's potential involvement, Maria approached him with information that would shock everyone present. "Sir, I need to inform you that I have extensive experience with hostage rescue operations and specialized training that may be relevant to this situation." Captain Williams stopped his radio conversation and stared at her with complete bewilderment. "Staff Sergeant, what exactly are you talking about? Your service record doesn't indicate any specialized training in hostage rescue or counterterrorism operations." Maria understood that the moment had arrived when operational security requirements might need to be balanced against mission effectiveness and the safety of civilian hostages. "Sir, significant portions of my service record are classified for operational security reasons. With your permission, I'd like to contact my previous command to discuss what information can be released given the current emergency situation." The implications of her statement were staggering. If Maria possessed classified experience with hostage rescue operations, it would explain many of the mysteries surrounding her exceptional capabilities and the gaps in her official records. It would also mean that the Marine Corps had assigned someone with extremely valuable specialized skills to what appeared to be a routine infantry unit. Captain Williams immediately authorized Maria to make the necessary contacts, while he continued coordinating with higher headquarters about the unit's potential role in resolving the crisis. As she moved away to make her secure communications, the other Marines exchanged glances that reflected their confusion and growing realization that their assumptions about their newest member had been dramatically incomplete. 20 minutes later, Maria returned with information that would transform everything the unit thought they understood about her background and capabilities. "Sir, I've been authorized to disclose certain aspects of my previous assignments in light of the current emergency. I served for 3 years with Marine Special Operations Command, specializing in direct action missions, including hostage rescue and counterterrorism operations. The silence that followed her revelation was deafening. Jake Morrison felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet as the implications of her words sank in. Marine Special Operations Command represented the elite of the elite, accepting only Marines who had demonstrated exceptional capabilities across every aspect of military operations. Furthermore, Maria continued, I completed advanced training at the FBI's Hostage Rescue Team facility, participated in joint operations with Delta Force and Navy SEALs, and led successful rescue operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. My transfer to this unit was intended to provide opportunity for normal Marine Corps service following completion of my special operations commitments. Captain Williams realized that he was looking at a Marine whose actual experience and capabilities far exceeded anything he had imagined. The mysterious gaps in her service record now made perfect sense. They reflected assignments and operations that remained classified at the highest levels of government. Staff Sergeant, he said carefully, given your background, what's your assessment of our unit's potential contribution to resolving the current hostage situation? Maria's response was immediate and comprehensive, demonstrating the kind of tactical analysis that comes from extensive real-world experience with similar operations. Sir, successful hostage rescue requires specialized equipment, detailed intelligence, and personnel with specific training in close-quarters combat and precision shooting. While our Marines are excellent, this type of operation typically requires capabilities beyond standard infantry training. However, she continued, I could serve as a liaison and tactical advisor to whatever specialized units respond to the crisis. My experience with these operations might help ensure optimal coordination and tactical decision-making. As word of Maria's revelation spread through the unit, Marines who had spent weeks questioning her qualifications found themselves grappling with the reality that they had been serving alongside someone whose combat experience and specialized training far exceeded their own. The woman they had doubted and tested was actually one of the most highly trained and experienced Marines any of them had ever encountered. Corporal Rodriguez approached Jake Morrison with an expression that reflected the confusion and embarrassment felt by many in the unit. Sergeant Morrison, I don't know what to say. All this time we've been questioning whether she belonged here, and it turns out she's probably more qualified than all of us combined. Jake was struggling with similar emotions, recognizing that his skepticism about Maria had been based on prejudices and assumptions rather than factual evaluation of her capabilities. The irony was overwhelming. He had been concerned about maintaining unit standards while questioning the qualifications of someone whose actual standards far exceeded anything he had experienced. Staff Sergeant Chun felt vindicated in his instincts about Maria's capabilities, but also amazed by the extent to which her actual background exceeded even his most optimistic assessments. I knew there was something special about her performance, but I never imagined anything like this. Marine Special Operations Command, that explains everything we've been seeing. The hostage situation was ultimately resolved by FBI Hostage Rescue Team specialists who arrived within hours of the initial emergency call. Maria served as a liaison during the operation, providing tactical insights and coordination support that contributed to the successful rescue of all hostages without casualties. Her professional interactions with the federal specialists clearly demonstrated her familiarity with these types of operations and the respect she commanded from elite law enforcement personnel. Following resolution of the crisis, Captain Williams requested a private meeting with Maria to discuss the implications of her revealed background for unit operations and her future assignments. The conversation took place in his office with the kind of security precautions that underscored the sensitive nature of her actual service record. Staff Sergeant Santos, Captain Williams began, I have to admit that I'm still processing the revelations about your background. Your actual experience and qualifications are extraordinary, far beyond what anyone in this unit realized. I'm curious about why you requested assignment to a standard infantry unit after serving with Special Operations Forces? Maria had anticipated this question and had given considerable thought to how she would explain her decision. Sir, after several years of high-intensity special operations, I wanted to return to basic Marine Corps service and contribute to regular unit operations. Special operations can be extremely demanding, both physically and psychologically, and I felt it was time to step back and serve in a more conventional capacity. Captain Williams understood that there were likely additional factors involved in her decision that she wasn't sharing, possibly including classified operational considerations or personal circumstances that had influenced her choice to leave special operations. I respect your decision, and I want you to know that this unit is fortunate to have someone with your experience and capabilities. However, he continued, I suspect that your actual qualifications may result in requests for you to return to specialized assignments. Marine Special Operations Command doesn't often allow personnel with your background and training to remain in conventional units for extended periods. His prediction would prove accurate within weeks, but for the moment, Maria was focused on continuing her service with the 3rd Battalion and contributing to their mission effectiveness while maintaining the professional relationships she had worked to develop. The aftermath of the hostage situation revelation transformed unit dynamics in ways that would have lasting impact on every Marine involved. Conversations that had previously been dominated by skepticism about women in combat roles were replaced by discussions about Maria's incredible background and the lessons that could be learned from her experience. Jake Morrison requested a private conversation with Maria, understanding that he owed her both an apology and an acknowledgement of how wrong his assumptions had been. The meeting took place during an evening when most other Marines were off duty, providing privacy for what would be a difficult but important conversation. Staff Sergeant Santos. Jake began, clearly uncomfortable with the admissions he needed to make. I owe you an apology for my attitude and behavior since your arrival. I allowed my preconceptions about women in combat to influence my judgment about your qualifications and capabilities. I was completely wrong, and I'm embarrassed by how I've acted. Maria appreciated his honesty and recognized the courage required for him to acknowledge his mistakes. Thank you for saying that, Sergeant Morrison. I understand that change is difficult and that integration of women into combat roles raises genuine concerns for many Marines. What matters is that we work together effectively to accomplish our mission and support each other as fellow Marines. Jake nodded, still processing the magnitude of his misjudgments. I have to ask, how did you deal with the skepticism and testing without losing your temper or becoming defensive? I know I made things difficult for you, but you never responded with anything but professionalism. I've faced similar challenges throughout my career, Maria replied. I learned that the most effective response to skepticism is consistent demonstration of capabilities and unwavering professionalism. Eventually, performance speaks louder than prejudice. Their conversation marked a turning point not only in their professional relationship, but also in Jake's broader understanding of gender integration issues and his own leadership responsibilities. He would become one of Maria's strongest advocates within the unit, using his influence to help other Marines overcome their own preconceptions. Word of Maria's actual background gradually spread throughout the battalion and eventually reached higher levels of Marine Corps leadership. Within 6 weeks of the hostage situation, she received orders for reassignment to a position that would better utilize her specialized skills and experience. Her time with the 3rd Battalion had been brief, but transformative for everyone involved. On her final day with the unit, Marines gathered for an informal farewell that reflected the respect and admiration she had earned through her service alongside them. Captain Williams presented her with a unit commendation that acknowledged both her contributions to training effectiveness and her role in supporting civilian emergency response operations. Staff Sergeant Santos, Captain Williams announced to the assembled Marines, "Your service with this unit has been exemplary in every respect. You've demonstrated the highest standards of Marine Corps excellence while helping all of us understand that capability and courage come in many forms. We're proud to have served alongside you. Corporal Rodriguez, speaking for many of the junior Marines, expressed gratitude for the mentorship and training she had provided during her brief assignment. Ma'am, you taught us things about leadership and professionalism that we'll remember throughout our careers. Thank you for your patience with us and for showing us what real excellence looks like. As Maria departed Camp Pendleton for her new assignment, she reflected on the lessons learned and relationships built during her time with the 3rd Battalion. The experience had reinforced her belief that prejudice and skepticism could be overcome through consistent demonstration of capability and unwavering commitment to professional standards. The Marines she left behind had been forever changed by their brief service alongside someone whose actual background and capabilities had shattered their assumptions about women in combat roles. Her legacy would influence unit culture and individual attitudes for years to come, contributing to the ongoing evolution of Marine Corps integration policies and practices. The story of Maria Santos and her time with the 3rd Battalion became part of Marine Corps folklore, illustrating the importance of judging Marines by their actions and capabilities rather than their appearance or background assumptions. It served as a powerful reminder that excellence and heroism come in many forms, and that the strength of the Corps lies in its ability to recognize and utilize the talents of all Marines regardless of their gender, background, or personal circumstances. Years later, when Marines from the 3rd Battalion shared stories about their service, they would inevitably mention the brief period when they served alongside one of the most exceptional Marines any of them had ever encountered. The woman they had initially doubted and tested had taught them lessons about capability, courage, and character that would influence their understanding of what it meant to be a Marine for the rest of their lives.